Okay. Good morning, everybody, and welcome to the District of North Saanich regular meeting of the Agriculture and Food Security Advisory Committee here at the Council Chambers. It's 10 o'clock on June 10th, and I'd like to call this meeting to order. Our next item on the agenda is the First Nations Territory Acknowledgement, and I would just like to say on behalf of us all that we were not the first people to come here, and that we are have an advantage or a benefit from working with those who did come first, the First Nations that came before us, and hopefully that relationship will continue to grow and we continue to learn from each other. Our next agenda item is the introduction of late items. We have a report on the Harvest Hub facility and new service update. So I'm going to introduce that late item, and I'm going to ask Barb, I think you're going to speak to it. Where would you like to see it on the agenda? Would you like to see it as part of the Harvest Hub update?
Yeah, I think if we can insert it to 6C, which is what it's referenced to in the late package, that would be great. Okay,
so we'll put that as in 6C, the late item. The late item being a staff report on the Harvest Hub facility and new service update. Okay, with that change, I'd like a motion from the committee to approve the agenda. Terry? Berna, any discussion? All those in favor? Okay, we have an agenda to work with. Our next agenda item is the adoption of minutes from the last meeting. Do I have a motion to adopt them? Berna? Greg? Okay. I do have a couple of points that I'd like to suggest. These are very small changes, but on our item in the minutes 29 and 31, the units are in feet squared and the other is in meters squared. So my suggestion would be that they all go to metric units or SI units, meters squared. Thank you. That's just I don't think that'll be. The other one is a bit more. I just want to make sure that the committee agrees with, because I wasn't at that meeting. But in item 32, it refers to the occupancy in a principal residence, and I believe that the discussion at the time was the principal residence of a it was a short-term rental, and so it's the maximum allowable persons from 6 to 8 for occupancy in a short-term rental, not a principal residence. Is that a better understanding of it?
Correct, that was my understanding.
Okay. So that would also just be a slight amendment to the minutes to better reflect the conversation. Is that right? Okay. Any other comments? So we've got a motion to adopt the minutes. Oh, could you say as amended?
Yes. I move to adopt the minutes as amended.
Okay, and the seconder agrees. Any more comments? All those in favor? Great. Thank you. Moving on in the agenda, we're into the report section, and our first report is from our council liaison. Oh, sorry, yeah? Oh, no, it's late. Sorry. No, take a sec. All right. Okay. So moving on in the agenda, we're into the report section. And our first report is Council Liaison report from Sanjeev.
Good morning, everyone. Thank you, Chair. Since the last meeting, the key update has been, or the change in the municipality, the district has been the approving of the officer bylaw that occurred on 29th of May. It was adopted 4-3 in favor. Thank you. That's the key update with regards to the agriculture. Nothing new from other than that. Thank you.
Thank you. Any comments? Yes.
With regard to that, can you explain why it was changed in the first place?
Thank you. Through the chair, there was a motion brought in by the mayor, so it's all out in public. I think there is no point elaborating anything that happened. So it was at the recommendation of, I presume, the district lawyer that the motion was brought forward. Thank you.
Any further comments? Darlene?
Relative to that bylaw being passed, I'll be very interested to see if it in any way impacts the rural agricultural character of North Saanich. Thank you.
No more comments? Thanks very much, Sanjeev.
Thank you.
Our next report is the staff liaison report from Barb.
Thank you. Not much to report. We've just got council approved the audited financial statements, and those have been filed. They were due May 15th, and we have prepared a statement of a SOFI report, statement of financial information report. That's due June 30th, and we're currently working on our annual report, which is also available for public review on the website, I believe, and also at the front counter, is also due to be filed or approved by council to June 30th. So we're meeting all those regulatory obligations and looking forward to summer, shifting our focus to projects.
Thank you. Any comments from the committee? Seeing none, hearing none, thank you very much. So we'll look forward to that, the SOFI report at the end of the month. The next report is the Harvest Hub update, and I'm going to leave it to Barb or Ben we're in your hands.
I'll maybe start off and then I'll hand it over to Ben at some point. Really from my focus, I've been working with Green Chain Consulting to gather information. They did the gathering of information, prepared a report on their findings and their conversations and meetings with the local stakeholders and local farmers. That sort of helped to guide. We've got a draft expression of interest that you can see in the draft staff report that we'll be taking to council for their review and approval, and continuing to work with Green Chain in fine-tuning some of the language in some of those reports. But the gist of it is there, that the recommendation is really for us to seek an operator to run that building and create the environment for the farmers to facilitate what they're doing in their environment. So from the construction phase, I don't know, Ben, did you want to add anything to that?
Hi folks, good morning. I'm sure you've all have driven past the site. I hope you have. We've got walls and a roof and sheathing, and they're now transitioning into rough ends for plumbing and electrical, and we're on schedule. So yeah, it's nice to see. I'm actually missing a consultant meeting update for the Harvest Hub right now, but they have it well in hand. And we're actively working with the Harvest Hub working group on the equipment and furnishing layout and looking at some alternatives to try and realize some cost savings to make sure we're fully equipped upon opening. Yeah, that's about it.
I'll just add, this is on the agenda for June 29th's meeting, and so we've brought this report, staff report, to this committee, given this is the last meeting before that council meeting, and so it would be good to have some motions from the committee to support and or if there's any recommendations that we can sort of incorporate into that final staff report to council for June 29th. That would be appreciated. Thanks.
Thanks, Barb. I might just add that the report largely considers operationalization of the Harvest Hub facility. And so if you recall, with the kind gift donation, we got mobilized quite quickly and executed the facility build, which I just discussed. We didn't fully realize a business plan to the extent that perhaps we could have. And so we're doing some of that work now. So what you see here is a bit of a reminder that in the early days, the staff offer two scenarios in terms of coordinating and running this new municipal service, one being the equivalent of a staff equivalent, and one being potentially an external operator. So this report reminds you folks of that initial thought process, and our recommendation to initially proceed with scenario 2, or pursue scenario 2, which would be to test the market for an external operator, and we can learn some more and see what kind of proponents we have. And in parallel with that, through our survey work and our workshop work, we're offering a draft business vision, for lack of a better description, and that's appended. So that talks about how we think this Harvest Hub might work most efficiently, and that's there to support the request for this external operator, and also for discussion and information for all parties and potential users. So,
Thank you very much. Thank you. Anything more to add? So I'm going to open it up to the committee for discussion. There are actually, in this section C, there are 3 reports. The Harvest Hub Working Group minutes for 2 meetings, and then there's the Harvest Hub Facility and New Service Update. So we're open to comments on any of those. Berna?
Thank you. Yes, and thank you for the report. It seems like it's a good plan. I'm looking forward to seeing what happens. I did notice a couple of things. There are some questions that came up for me just as I was reading it, mostly small things. Just on page 14 in the first paragraph, it mentions primary users of the Harvest Hub will be small-scale farmers located on or near the Sandown Centre. And, well, I certainly expect that. Well, first of all, my understanding is the Sandown Centre is the 13 acres that's being operated, the Sandown Centre for Regenerative Agriculture, and I expect that they will be, wanting to avail themselves of it, but I'm not sure why it needs to say near the Sandown Centre, and I think it goes on to say, as well as other regional producers who may benefit from specialized primary processing capabilities, but I think there are small-scale farmers throughout the district who will appreciate the aggregation, distribution, and processing services as well, and not strictly specialized primary processing capabilities. So it gets kind of specific where I don't think it needs to.
Thanks, Bernadette. What page is that again?
Page 14, first paragraph.
Is it page 14? First paragraph.
Yeah, I agree.
Under marketing?
Food processors, food producers.
Sorry,
yeah.
is it 14?
Oh, marketing, yes, and then food producers.
Excellent. That's a great catch. I think it's just the language from Darren. The only thing, there was a lot of things that we went through, and a lot of revisions that we did, so we couldn't possibly get them all. That's why it's draft and coming here. So this is great.
Yeah, I'm happy to help.
No issue there.
Sandown Centre is mentioned again on page 23, right at the top. The Harvest Hub will be located at the Sandown Centre, but I think it needs to be on the Sandown lands or something like that.
Yeah, I think I also saw those comments, and so I went through the document, and I'd like to see that updated from our consultant to just change the language that it's not, there's some cleanup of language there that needs to happen, and that's exactly one of the ones in the areas that I also made note of to have that conversation. So, yeah, thank you for that.
Okay, thank you.
Just further to that, the consultant in part isolation was, given the criteria that because of the non-farm or of the farm use, that 50% of the produce has to come from the lands. And so in his thinking, he's like, well, the primary user is going to be Sandown.
Yeah.
And that's true. 50% is going to needs to come. We can always apply for a non-farm use permit after year 1 if we find some other scenarios happening. But I think that what you're seeing here is him translating that into the document. So it's not meant to be so focused that way. But thank you for those comments.
Okay. Thank you. I figured that. I just thought I'd raise it to your attention. Another one is that on page 23, it mentions that the core facility components, one of them will be dry storage. And I don't think we have a whole lot of dry storage space. And dry storage is mentioned again on page 24. So I don't know if that's, anything that needs to even be addressed or not. But I just noted that. And on page 15, the first paragraph, it says, additionally, Harvest Hub users and partners will also be encouraged, where applicable, to house their equipment at the hub and potentially share it with other users. I don't think there's any room for housing much equipment there, so.
Bernadette, I think that came from Alan's beekeeping equipment.
Okay.
So it was just translated to be a bit more global, but
Yeah.
you're right. That would work for the beekeeping equipment, but perhaps not for other equipment, so. Good.
And maybe they don't need to be encouraged. But
That's true.
yeah, okay. And I think the only other one was on staffing and building maintenance, also on page 15. It says the district has committed to provide funding to the equivalent of a half full-time equivalent employee while also covering core overhead costs. Maybe it's just me, but to me it sounds like there will be money there to the equivalent of a half full-time equivalent employee for a different operator. So I don't know if I'm reading that wrong or what.
I can maybe speak for Barb there, but in the original scenarios, 1 and 2, when we guessed, envisioned what it would take to run a new service, coming from conception up to potentially self-sufficiency, the scenarios were that if it was a staff run effort, we estimated that it'd be the equivalent of a half-time person. And if it was an external operator, there would still be like perhaps a quarter or less of staff time, just for some coordination. And so that the idea here with this expression of interest is to indicate the district does recognize there's going to be some core funding required initially, maybe just in year 1 to 3. So that does need to be revised to say perhaps a quarter or some kind of language that says it's not going to be self-sufficient from day 1.
Yeah.
So that was the idea there with the scenarios and translating into this. Barb, did I present that well? Or?
Yeah, I think we can tighten that up and clarify that a little bit more, because that's, when you read the document over and over again, you don't see things like that. So that's great to point that out. But yeah, it's more about, support of so that they have a point person to connect with when issues or things come up, that they've got, a name that they can talk to as they run that building and operate that building.
Okay, thank you very much.
Thanks, Berna. Greg?
Sorry, so the one thing that was mentioned, Ben, was on time. The other word I didn't hear was on budget. And I'm guessing you're going to face that question, so we might as well address that now.
Yes, the budget question. Well, we have executed a fixed price contract now, and it was for just over $1 million. So we are within budget. There's always pressures, right? And there will be right through, well, we're getting out of the pressure area, but items that I'm dealing with right now with cost, with other related costs are, but no, we are on budget. Yeah, and I have confidence that we'll execute on budget.
That's all I needed to hear, and I think that's probably what council will want to hear as well. So thank you for that. I guess my last comment was, and to follow up on Berna's comment about the 1/2 FTE, I think the idea, and correct me if I'm wrong, was to provide the optionality and flexibility of the first few years of we don't know how it's necessarily going to look. So there is provision for a staff member to at least communicate and possibly the handover or the initial operations before we actually identify an operator. So words like that, I don't know. I'm just throwing those out there, but something to consider.
Yeah, and to be fair to the terms of the gift agreement, it does somewhat explicitly state that the facility will be run by a staff member for the period of 5 years. And so whether that will have to be further communicated with the donor, but whether it's run by the district by an actual unionized employee, or there's a set of criteria established and there's a liaison between the district and a third-party operator that's appropriate. I think that still meets the intent of that gift agreement, but we can further, obviously, discuss that.
I think the donor would be in agreement, and you won't have any problems getting that amended, so, yeah.
Thanks for the reports. Just a question about the hiring of this half-time FTE. I'm sure that you will screen them for background and experience in the area that they're going to be working. My concern, I guess, is if the farmers have any difficulties in that relationship with whoever the staff person is, can the Ag Committee be sort of a backstop for any concerns that the farmers might have about how things are going? I mean, maybe this is muddying it and you don't want to go there, and nobody wants to go there, but just if you get someone that's really experienced and knows what they're doing, there won't be any problems. But there's sometimes not everyone is experienced in agriculture.
Thanks for the question. Barb, I can provide a bit of a response. There'll be, like, obviously as a service, this is a new municipal service, like all of our services, so we've got customers. So one of the primary performance criteria are to meet the needs of the customer. So that will be something that is measured internally by staff under our current governance. And if there's complaints, just like if there's complaints with traffic management, I would receive a series of complaints. That would be elevated through our administration, through our CAO, and eventually it might come to mayor and council for discussion. And the service being delivered would be changed to meet the needs of our clients. So there wouldn't be anything formally set up with, if one farmer doesn't like this external operator for some reason, there would be a dispute mechanism. But the idea is that when we hire an external operator, we would understand, and that would be a criteria. And the hiring and the establishment of an operator, that governance is to be determined if you read through the document, like the selection criteria. So what's the selection criteria for these proponents? It would, obviously, there could be members from different groups. So that's up for discussion still. But perhaps that's a good way to have it captured, your concerns, that there would be a representative from the working group or the Ag Committee that could sit on that selection criteria board for this external operator. And then all the different parties could sort of understand what their priorities are, and then there'd be a series of questions and evaluation and whatnot. So that would be a more appropriate way to ensure, yeah.
So I think I should first make it clear that, this food hub is something that, as, my job to advocate for farmers, I think I'm really thrilled that we're doing it, because it's what I have heard from producers is what they want. And I'm putting that ahead of this question for what will become obvious reasons. Something that I didn't see in the document is an exit strategy. I did see, okay, here are potentially some problems and how we can mitigate that, basically being double down and try harder. But what happens if 5 years from now, the district is going, gee, that didn't work? What do we do? It would be great, I think, to have that outlined a little bit in the document.
Thank you. Absolutely, that needs to be a discussion and a plan that the district needs to understand. Whether or not it's in these documents pursuing like a external operator in the business plan, but that's something that we can perhaps we can have a discussion in a future meeting. I do think that the selection of the facility on agricultural land that currently had no facilities really provides a lot of functionality into the future for a lot of different scenarios. So we might find that our vision of what a food hub perhaps could be is totally different. And we'll still be left with a very functional utilitarian farm building that's still owned and with all the adjacent farmland for farming uses. So I think that there's lots of possibilities if for some reason this wouldn't go exactly how we're envisioning. But I've had those same thoughts. And that's why I was also really in support of having it adjacent on Sandown versus say here, where there's a lot of dual functionality and some benefits. But yeah.
I would just add to that, there's two parts to it. I think Ben has alluded to it. In my mind, the agreement, should there be a successful candidate come forward, the next step would be an agreement. The agreement should also have an exit strategy as well. But the other part would be, I see where you're going with this, but I think it's more of a pivot strategy as opposed to an exit strategy. If something should change there, I think we're going to learn a lot of things as we move down this pathway over the next 2, 3, 5, and beyond years. So, yeah.
Thank you. Something else that I didn't really see in the document that I would be curious to know is what do you think the output of this is going to be? And I realize that's a hard question, and baked into it is more questions like which model do we pick? But not even at the proposed expansion, but at the way that it's being built right now. Is it going to be feeding 100 families, or is it going to be feeding 300 families? I'm wondering if there's a way to understand or estimate that, simply as a way to communicate to the district and the people who are looking at this, for them to be able to say, oh, hey, this is cool. Because it's hard to grasp that. I mean, certainly it is for me, and I'm a farmer, so.
Yeah, I think that's a great question. I think, how we measure success if we're successful with an operator, is that how we want to measure success? I don't know that. And if that's something that council or committee is interested in understanding, that could be sort of put into the criteria of what kind of outputs we would like to see from the operator to understand, is it families we're feeding, or is it farms that we're supporting in their business model? I don't know if you want to add anything to that, Ben.
With this kind of not problem but opportunity, I guess, it's very well suited for this type of procurement where we have a mandate. We want to support agriculture in our community. And there's so many ways that can come to fruition. So now what we're doing is this expression of interest is like, what kind of expertise is out there? Because each one of those submissions, in a perfect world, we're going to have submissions that are strong in different fronts. And we'll have a hard time saying, well, this one really supports perhaps like smaller scale farmers. This one supports and gears up for, has a higher monetary output, we think. This one supports the funnel of younger farmers better. And we think this will have a longer term benefit. So we don't know exactly what that's going to look like. That's part of the expression of interest approach. But yeah, great questions and great thoughts.
Anybody want to speak for the first time? Terry?
Thanks, through the chair. I'm going through this document, and there doesn't seem to be a health and safety section, and there doesn't seem to be anything about the responsibilities of who's responsible for health and safety on the site, because as we know, that's another district work site, right? So as per work safe regulations, I think we need to put something in here about that. And the expectations of the hub operator, is he responsible for health and safety, or who's going to manage that on site? Because you got parking, you have a lot of operators coming and going, a lot of protocols. Somebody needs to be responsible for that.
So just having attended a health and safety committee meeting, it's top of mind for sure. And typically, you know, in the agreement, we can put language in there that, and they would be, they're their own organization as a leaser of the space in effect. They would be responsible for ensuring that their employees and their people running through that, whether they're volunteers or paid people, that they're adhering to some health and safety protocols. The district will also have a little bit in the sense that if we have our employees going through there, we will also be mindful. So they're a bit, I think it'll be a bit of both, but yes, there will be some language in ensuring that it comes into the agreement is where that will come in.
Okay, well, just further that, because somebody needs to be designated the prime contractor or prime operator. So that's actually very legalized language that needs to be included there somewhere.
So Darlene, you still? Okay, thank you. Good comments. I guess it's my turn now. And many of you have already been made. The first one I'd like to make is that the staff report from August of last year is remarkably prescient. I mean, I'm comparing what we're like, you know, many months later, and I think a lot of the stuff that was raised last August is been carried over. So in many ways, I don't think council will be too surprised at this report, because I think it follows very closely to what was initially presented in the much more kind of planning stages. I did have a couple of comments, and this goes to your request to, you know, what may or may not be small changes. This is really small. On page 7, the third paragraph down, the district has also committed to supporting the service for a minimum of 5 years, and I think it should be has as opposed to as. And I'm not sure if it's identified the need for funding, because we don't know that yet, but it's certainly budgeted for funding, which I think is more reassuring to me that it's been budgeted and we may not ever need it. The next one is on page 11. The second paragraph, it is important that this retail component is positioned to complement rather than compete with. It's a great point. But once again, as Berna pointed out, it kind of focuses on Sandown. And I think I haven't seen any reference to the Saturday North Saanich Farm Market, which has been going since 2008. It's 10 times bigger than the weekly pop-up market at Sandown. And it's managed by the Food for the Future Society. So it seems like that part of our agricultural tapestry hasn't been reflected, and I think it's going to play a big role. It's going to certainly benefit from the Harvest Hub. On page 13 in the Governance and Management section under Governance, in the first paragraph, helping to ensure the Harvest Hub remains practical, relevant, and grounded in the needs of its users. Personally, I'd like to put accountable in there, because I think that covers a lot of financial and what Darlene was saying, the needs of other farmers. On page 14, I noticed the same thing that Berna did, and I was going to say, rather than said on or near the Sandown Centre, it would just be in North Saanich. I mean, it's meant to. The next paragraph down, food buyers, I stumbled a little bit at the sentence, at the same time households in the Saanich Peninsula, particularly higher income consumers. I don't see the need for higher income in there. The social media strategy at the end of that page, I kind of expected something to be in coordination with the district, because the district has its own social media strategy, and I'd like to see the two coordinated. The next page, the financials and the startup costs. The first line is strongly supported through public investment. And my understanding, I could have it wrong, but there is a 60-40 investment that came from the private source. And I think a 60-40 public-private split is something for people to understand. Oh yeah, and then the next paragraph down, the half-time full equivalent employee, and I understand the comments that have been made about running it, but I went to it, I thought the district was accepting some of the responsibility through an employee to maintain the facility, to do, you know, the maintenance of the actual building, checking, make sure the health inspector is going through, or not the health inspector, but more facility management type of things. And I don't know if that's what you're budgeting for, or if this is just something in the operating side of it. Anyway, I'd like you to look at that, because I haven't seen any recognition that this building as a building needs looking after, and if that's the operator going to do that, or that's the district going to do that. And this is actually very good, Barb. I think it's a wonderful document. But once again, page 22, the second paragraph, stakeholder input. I wasn't clear on this. It says, stakeholders include farmers, producers, beekeepers, and representatives connected to the Sandown Centre. And I was unclear to me, does that mean like the Red Barn? Is that the Sandown Centre you're talking about? Or is this, once again, this kind of ambiguous calling Sandown Centre for Regenerative Agriculture the Sandown Centre? And that flips again also in the Harvest Hub will be located at the Sandown Centre, which is the same that Berna mentioned. So I think that's part of going through this document, clarifying what we mean. And then on page 25, as Terry pointed out, the operational management, I think it's important to have a health and safety. Clearly, that the qualifications of the operator to comply with all health and safety. On page 28, the expression of interest process, the contact person, I'm sure this will be made clearer, but it says the proponent is solely responsible to seek clarification from the district on any matter. To me, that's ambiguous. Is that the contact person for the district, or is that somebody else in the district? Is that the ag committee? I just think that could be unnecessarily confusing. And that's it. And that concludes my comments on this really, I think, great document. I think it really takes us forward. As I said at the beginning, I like the fact that there's no, in my opinion anyway, there's no big surprises in this. This is what we thought would happen with more work and more application. It has happened. One of the comments that came up from Angus, part of the Harvest Hub, and we haven't done this yet because we only had the visit yesterday or earlier this week, but the experiences of similar organizations and facilities and how they've dealt with hard times and how they've gone through, as Barb says, the pivoting, the nimbleness, and how the outcomes may change depending on the circumstances. And that's agriculture. So I do think it's a really good point. I think it's hard to predict that right now, but probably something that should be in the evaluation of the expression of the respondents to the expression of interest. So those are my comments. I hope they're helpful. Greg?
Oh, yeah. Yeah, no, I've made notes of those comments, so we'll work that into the draft.
Okay, I appreciate that. Thank you.
Going forward for here, do we need a motion? Go ahead.
Sorry, just one interruption. Are you confident with your notes? And I wouldn't want to just miss something that was discussed. Is there anything else that we should, because I've got notes too, but I'm not super confident in my notes.
Yeah, I think I've made note of where your concerns are, and I'm just going through it. When I reviewed my initial draft, it raised the sort of similar issues that I had as well. So we're all kind of on the same page, so to speak, on where you've raised. I've also raised and made those notes as well. So I think we've got it, but maybe I may reach out if I need clarity.
I will be going through with the working group the same documents. So we'll probably do a track changes, Barb, between us, and then we'll at least make that available because it's easier to do that informally with the working group. And then that will be crystallized in what will go to the council on the 29th. With those,
Yeah, I appreciate that. We're more than happy to do whatever we can to crystallize it, as Ben says.
Okay.
Sorry, just to finish up then, no, well, thank you, Ben, for that, and that clarification. So I'm just wondering now to go forward, I'm comfortable with the thoroughness of the report that we've seen that's been prepared for us. So there's obviously some amendments. I feel very comfortable for Barb and Ben to work through that. And then if it's going through the working group, then I think that's one final step. I guess the question would be, is the rest of the committee okay with that the changes that have been recommended here, are they happy with just the working group taking a look at that before it goes to council, would be my question.
So many of us are on the working group, so it'd be really for the people who, our oversight committee, which is Angus and Karen.
So speak directly to that. Yeah, no, I'm okay with that. I think we've sort of talked about a number of issues that all sound pretty good to me. I do have another question that the answer might be you're getting ahead of yourself there, Angus, or maybe it's that's a good point. But reading through the report, one other thing that popped into my head was, yes, okay, there's two models that we can see in the future. One is where we can find someone who's going to operate this for us. Another is where the city is operating, district is operating it, and they are in charge of marketing the produce, whatever that is, or I don't know what the right term for it is, the product. I couldn't understand how that would work. I understand the idea of reaching out to, I guess my question is, does that mean that someone from the district is going to be coordinating with, like the report said, retirement homes, schools, the Red Barn, et cetera, receiving contracts and then putting them out to tender toward local farmers? How does that, because it's not like they can say, yes, it says in the document, okay, it's great, we're gonna have pre-purchased basically things so that we can ensure that there's minimal amount of waste. But that means that there has to be the people who are actually growing it, and they have to know that there's gonna be growing it. So there's, in fact, two contracts, one on either side. Maybe it's just beyond the scope of this report, but when I read that, I was kind of like, I wouldn't want that job. So maybe I'm missing something. So I don't know if you could speak to that.
Thanks, Angus. Yeah, and I don't want to write that job description. So this external operator, this is our current focus, like the lane that we're seeking. But should we not be satisfied with the proponents that come knocking on the door, we will have to transition and draft out that job description and understand how can we meet those pieces that are required. What kind of, maybe there's a board or a governance for that, and there is a staff component, but it's isolated to certain activities, and the other activities are important. Like maybe it's a marketing contract that we find someone that can do that for us, that can be measured on a 12-month reoccurring basis. I'm not sure how that's going to happen. It will take a lot more staff thinking to pursue that if that's the way we end up realizing we have to go. But yeah, I've been thinking similar things.
Yeah, I think, we're hopeful and hoping that there will be somebody that will step forward that meets our criteria in the expression of interest. And that the plan B is to go the other route, as you mentioned, and that will then require more work on our parts to figure out those next steps. What does that really look like, and what does the job description in fact look like? And it might be a slower start to the whole thing than somebody sort of jumping in with 2 feet. It might be 1 foot jumping in, but we're not there yet. So I don't want to spend a lot of time, I don't think, on that just yet, until I understand that this is not going to be moving forward. However, once we get to that stage, we'll have to move relatively quickly. So yeah, lots of work yet.
And just to add to that, that's what I like about your approach. We'll do the ROI. We'll learn an awful lot from how they respond to that ROI, and that then informs whether or not it's sufficient, or if we do come in-house, we've got all that information that the proposals will bring in with them. Great.
Yeah, just further on that, I struggled with the same things, being a finance guy as well. And part of it comes down to, I think the things we've learned from going to the various other food hubs on the island and on other islands is that there is a bit of a struggle in the first couple of years to find out what the operating model should be. And what we learned yesterday was that if you looked at the original conceding documents of the route and what its vision was, you would not recognize what's happening there now, that it had morphed so much and had to move. You know, they had to be, as they use the word nimble, we've used the word pivot. And so we just have to have the flexibility to be able to do that, and the time frame and the support from council and the community to be able to have that time to get to that point. And it always changes. As I think it was said, agriculture is one of those where, well, you just don't know what's coming at you. So I'm confident that we'll get there, that we have the support of staff and council and funding there initially to be able to get to that point. And it will be bumpy, there's no question. And that's certainly what we learned from meeting with the other food hubs in the district and other areas as well. So.
Okay, so if there's no more questions, I'd like to move on to the motion, what we want to do. Did you want to make it, or do you have something else to say?
Sure, I would like to make the motion. Or do you want to make it? I don't care.
No, I'm happy for you to make it. I would just go along the lines that the committee endorse it. Okay. And this is going on the premise that you've heard our recommendations, but I think that the motion should be along the lines that the Agriculture and Food Security Advisory Committee endorse the recommendations in the staff report, which are for council to receive, well, what are the recommendations are? There's two recommendations: receive the report for information and approve the request for expression of interest. So I just want our committee, I'm sorry, Shay, this is probably just getting all confused. I'll say it again. I just want to explain that we're just going to go with the recommendations that came from the report, unless there's something subsequent to this conversation that might change that. Sanjeev?
Thank you, Chair. I just have a question. I know there's been a level of issues raised about the usage of the term Sandown Center. Is there a different nomenclature that the committee would like to propose so that it allows growth for future purposes? So just a point to think about.
I think my thought was to remove Sandown because the Sandown Lands is a bigger name.
Exactly.
We could refer to it as the address, but not Sandown Center, because when you sort of Google that, it goes to CFFS and that lease space. And so I think we want to pull it back to a bigger piece of land or location. So my thought was to change that language more to either like Sandown Lands and refer to the address. But I'm happy to take any other recommendations.
I tend to, sorry, you first? Oh. Yeah, I think now looking at it and hearing is that we should be clear if we're talking about CFFS, we should say that. If we're just talking about the Sandown Center, we shouldn't use Sandown Center because they might go to Canadian Tire. And it should just be the Sandown, or the district Sandown property, or something, or.
Sir, I would just add to that, and this comes back from my days of drafting legal documents, but would it be possible just to put the address and then in brackets, Sandown lands or municipal lands or whatever, and then we can refer to Sandown, but it references the address.
I'd like to get rid of the Sandown name altogether and maybe call it the Harvest Lands. Then we've got the Sandown doing growing and harvesting. We hopefully will have a lot more agriculture in the remainder of the Sandown lands, and we've got the Harvest Hub. So the Harvest Hub is the retail area of the harvest lands at you could say at Sandown, but the harvest lands would encompass everybody. Just a thought.
Any comments on Greg?
If you Google the address, what comes up?
It's actually, it's funny, actually.
1811 Glen.
1810, and there's also 17, then there's the old address, 1710, that is out there as well.
So, I mean, what I don't want to do is confuse people. There is a Sandown name recognition, good or bad. But when you say Sandown, it means something to people. And when somebody says Sandown to me, I think of that entire municipal lands. So I think if we add a new term, and this is just my thought, like harvest lands, people aren't familiar with that. They're barely familiar with what a harvest hub is, let alone where the lands are. So I would prefer to stick with whatever name when you Google Earth, that address, those entire lands come up. And if that's not possible, then we'll have to go to B, but I would suggest sticking with the address in brackets, whatever common term is used that the municipality used to refer to those lands that they own.
That's great. Thanks for the comment. And Darlene, great comment as well. Darlene's comment just made me realize that our next effort is going to really be talking about the Sandown lands as a whole is going to have a harvest hub facility. It will have a tenant doing some major contribution, 50% contribution, and there's going to be the other agricultural lands. So there's really those three pieces. So clarity is required in the document. That's for sure. So leave it with us, and you'll see it through the working group and/or at the 29th.
Okay, thanks. So we'll leave it with you. I just add one thing, and Ben mentioned it. There is a Sandown Centre, which is the industrial side, which is Canadian Tire Red Barn, and I'm not sure if that's trademarked. Or it could be, maybe it's Sandown something else.
I think it's Sandown Commons.
Okay, as long as we don't, yeah. Terry?
Through the chair, actually, I just typed in Sandown on Google Maps, and you get Sandown Center for Regeneration, Sandown Liquor Store, Sandown Road, Sandown Park Race Course in the UK, of course, and then you get Sandown Elementary School in Camel River. I'm thinking if we could get away from the name Sandown, just say North Saanich even. That's what my thoughts are, or maybe just harvest lands. But it might be better to just get away from that name because there's so many things associated with it. Thank you.
Okay, that was actually, I think, very worthwhile, that last little conversation about identification. I want to get back to the motion. And the motion that I'm putting on the floor is that the Agricultural Committee recommends to Council to, one, receive the financial report, or the report on the Harvest Hub facility and new surface update for information, and two, approve the request for expression of interest for an external operator to operate the new Harvest Hub service. So that follows very closely to what staff will be recommending. Are there any, is there a seconder for that motion? Greg, are there any comments on that motion? Yep.
Is that what you guys would like to be able to read at the meeting? Is that going to be? Yeah.
Okay. All those in favor? So we're all in favor. And motion passes. Thank you. So we've closed that, and that was a really important part of our meeting this morning. Thank you. Our next agenda item is unfinished business. Is the zoning bylaw update. Oh, sorry, D. Thank you very much. We do have one more report. That's the Agriculture and Food Security Working Group event notes from the mock pack Berna has submitted. So, Berna, you've got it.
Thank you. Yeah, I was involved with the the Agriculture and Food Security Subcommittee of the Minister's OCP Advisory Committee. And back in January of 2025, we hosted a meeting and dinner with farmers in the area, and as many farmers as we could contact were invited. And we had, I think, about 50 people there, mostly farmers, a few counselors, a couple of staff persons. And it was a really great meeting where we listed lots of comments. And there were 5 categories in terms of strengths of how the district is helping farmers to be successful. What are the strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, threats? And there was another group on trees, and trees on farmland. So I'm not sure if you had a chance to look at the comments. There's a lot of them, but and they cover a whole array of opinions and experiences. But I thought it was really important that they be included or that you at least get to see them, because I think they apply to the zoning bylaw. And what I found is that when comments were brought forward, and then the OCP was presented, I would ask, well, where do we see those comments reflected in the OCP? And then I was told, no, it's in the zoning bylaw that we get down to it. So I felt like I wasn't seeing a lot of that in the zoning bylaw. So I thought, I wanted to bring that to this committee as we talk about the zoning bylaw. And I found that there were some themes that kind of went through. And so that's why I asked that these be included, so that you could have a chance to look at them as we discuss the zoning bylaw. And also hoping that the representatives for the tree bylaw working group will also look at those comments related to trees and bring that to that group as well. Thank you.
Any comments on that? Thanks very much, Berna. Greg?
Berna, you said there was some synthesis of what you found. Like, could we go through that? Because that would, like, your lens going through that, having been there, I think would be important for us. I mean, we could read through them all, which would be helpful, I guess. But I think to get your lens on it in terms of what you saw, what the synthesis of that, could you go through that with us?
Yes, I made a few notes.
Actually, I was wondering, do you want to do that now, or do you want to do that when we talk about the zoning bylaw update? What's your pref?
Yeah, we can certainly do that then.
Which is the next agenda item?
Right.
Okay, great.
I had a question. Forgive me, because when I looked at the date on this, I went, January 2026. What year is it right now? So when was this? Was it 2025? Okay.
Yes, it was 25,
okay.
Yes.
Thank you. Yeah. Because I was wondering, I never got invited to this.
Yeah, I would just add to that, there's no year on the report. It just says January 23rd. So I was thinking, what year is this? So just a comment. Thank you.
Karen, did you want to say something? That was my question. Oh, that was your question too. Good. Because it says 26 on here. Okay. So thanks. I think we're going to take this and then when we get into the our next agenda item, which is the zoning bylaw update, I think that would be an appropriate place to discuss it. Okay, thank you. So now we are moving on to our next agenda item, which is the unfinished business, and this is the zoning bylaw update. I know that the committee had discussed it at the previous meeting and had asked for further discussion. So I think the way we'll start, we do have, I'll go to staff. Can you please comment?
Sorry, and thank you, Peter. I just realized that Joe hasn't been introduced to this group, and so I wasn't prepared, but just on behalf of the district, we wanted to introduce and welcome Joe. Joe's now with us for a period of about 3 months, and Joe's a seasoned professional, and we're very pleased that he made time in his between his hobbies to come and support the department during this time. So welcome, Joe, and here's Joe.
Yes, okay, thank you. I welcome you. The whole committee welcomes you. And, actually, we'd appreciate it if you could give us a little background on your experience, and especially your experience on dealing with advisory committees.
Okay, my name is Joe Kalenda. I'm going to be serving as your interim director of planning and community services for about 3 months, so till the end of August, but that can be extended a little bit if needed and so on. So my background, I'm a city planner. I started my city planning career in Guelph, Ontario in 1975. I'm a graduate of the University of Waterloo in Ontario, which is 45-minute drive from where I was born and raised. And then I did planning in, Ontario, Alberta, and British Columbia. Lately, I am in fact retired. I retired in 2008, but since then, I've been a planning consultant, and I've done a lot of these interim tours of duties where you become Mr. In-between between the person who's left and the next person who's coming in. So I'm Mr. In-between as the planning director for the next 3 months. But I've also been Mr. In-between in Merritt, Port Alberni, White Rock, Lansville, and now in North Saanich. So my primary job is to help the planning staff get over the hump. But in particular, my job is to get your zoning bylaw 1606 adopted more or less by the end of summer, hopefully by the end of August, but we'll see. After which, the work becomes implementing the OCP, including the development cost charge bylaw, which I probably won't be involved in, the ACC bylaw, updating the subdivision regulation, and maybe starting to talk about inclusionary zoning. If that's of any benefit to North Saanich, it may not be. It's not for every community, and we're 12,000 people, rural community. Inclusionary zoning may not be for us, and density bonusing may not be for us. But those are items that we do not have to deal in the zoning bylaw update. They can be dealt with later. The purpose of the zoning bylaw, 100%, is to implement your OCP, period. Your OCP was adopted in July of 2025. It is the duty of the city planner and city council to implement its OCP now more than ever, and you use the zoning bylaw as your primary tool to implement your OCP. We have a really good team here already in terms of planners and so on. Although we don't have a planning manager, that's a big hole, and I hope it's a hole that is soon to be filled. But the face of the zoning bylaw 1606 will be Monica DeViti, your planner, Dylan Clark, your planning assistant, and they'll be assigned the task of designing and managing the open house program that we're going to have over the next 6 or 8 weeks as we introduce the new zoning bylaw to the general public. And this is from the perspective of information. Here's what council is thinking of doing. They've already given first reading to this, and so what do you think? And then we have Trevor Parks and Tyler Erickson. Trevor, I think, presented the zoning bylaw to you last month, I believe. So Trevor and Tyler will be involved in editing and presenting the edited zoning bylaw to the city council and to the committees and so on. And hopefully this is all done by August 21st. My role is to simply help the team do their job, and that's kind of what I'm focusing on. So your draft zoning bylaw is in really, really good shape already. It needs a few definitions added. It needs some things edited, but in terms of format and content, it's all there. And by content, I mean you have in your new zoning bylaw all the new zones you need to implement the OCP that you adopted last year. So from that perspective, it's kind of perfect. Sorry, it's good. There's no such thing as a perfect bylaw, and we don't want perfect to be the enemy of good. You have a good zoning bylaw We have to trim it up a little bit before we bring it back to council for second reading, second, third, and adoption. And that's where we're at. So, any questions?
Okay, thank you. Yes, Greg?
Thank you very much, Joe. Pleasure to have met you.
Thank you, Greg.
And I'm sure there'll be more meetings going forward. So 8 weeks, that puts us at August 15th. How many more council meetings are left, and are you planning for a reading of second and third reading and approval at that same meeting? Because you're running out of time before an election.
Yeah, so August 17th is the meeting of council in August. August 17th is the meeting but we also have a meeting September 21 and September 28th. Those are regular meetings of council. And it's also true that the mayor can call a special meeting if need be, if we need that. But let's see what the next 2 months look like in terms of our public engagement and editing the zoning bylaw that already has first reading. And, you know, I think it's important that this thing be put to bed before the election. You don't want it to be an election issue. You want it to be a foregone conclusion. You don't want to relitigate the OCP because you spent 5 years building that OCP, which you adopted in July of 2025. It's a really good OCP for your town. For your town of 12,000 people, for your rural, urban nature and so on, you already have a really good OCP. We don't need to rebuild it. In fact, it's my hope that you don't think about the OCP for the next 5 years. Just use it to do your business, you know? But we need the zoning bylaw to implement the OCP. So if we can get that done by the end of summer, you'll be in really, really good shape. And if you get a zoning bylaw adopted, it can become an election issue if it wants to be, but at least you have the tools to do your job, you know? And that's my interest, to get you the tools so you can do your job, you know?
Okay, thanks. And actually, before we go too much further, I just want to clarify a couple of things. Felice, who put a lot of work into this OCP.
He sure did.
His involvement is now, there's no involvement with Felice going forward?
Well, Felice is on paid administrative leave. So,
right. Yeah. So in the time frame that you're talking about, will we seeing Felice again?
I don't think so.
Joe is our interim director, so what the future holds.
Okay. I would like to take this opportunity to express my thanks to Felice for all the work he did on the OCP. Yep. And for the time he spent with us as an advisory committee, letting us know how things unfold. He was very open about it, and I think it's just, from this committee, it was a very heartfelt thanks to what he did.
Thank you.
Which leads me actually to Joe. What experience do you have with agricultural advisory committees? Being this is who we are.
Yeah, well, hardly any at all. Yeah. So.
Fair enough. So I just wanted to get that done. So we did want to have a continuation of the zoning bylaw update. Karen, do you want to?
Thank you. Welcome.
Thank you.
I do have a question. You mentioned we do not have a planning manager. Does that mean Mary is no longer here too?
Yeah, Mary left in March, or?
Mary's not currently in the office.
Does that mean she's no longer working here, or is she coming back? I only asked the question because, again, Felice was fabulous, and so was Mary, and they had a pretty good, strong understanding of the importance of agriculture. So I'm feeling like the net's come out from under us a little bit here, and how do we bring new people up to speed? And even the discussion we had with Trevor last time was more of he told us how it was, and I don't know if he took any of our feedback and actually applied it. So I just need to know what's going on.
Okay. So that's a very good comment, Karen. So by feedback, well, I think last month you were asked to look at as it relates to short-term residential units, you were asked to look at revising the zoning bylaw standard from 6 to 4 to 8 to 6. And I think you voted not to support that. Is that correct? Okay. Well, that feedback's going back to council, you know.
There was also other feedback that was provided, and one motion I did not support, but it did go through, which was to do with the ALC and outright two houses on the ALR. But I also had concerns about greenhouse size limitations. I don't know where that went. Lot coverage concerns, and then we ran out of time, and so I'd like to pursue some more of that.
Yeah. Well, if you're asking to do more work on the zoning bylaw update as we head towards adoption, yeah, we can put that on the agenda if you want, you know? Yeah. And then, sorry.
I'd just like to add and remind the committee members that it's not staff's job. Staff isn't empowered to take every comment and make a revision. It's staff's job to facilitate the information sharing here, for this committee to make recommendations that go to council. Staff receive direction from council. And so all of those recommendations to the word are received by staff and executed. And that will continue. That's been the history here in North Saanich, and that will continue. So don't be concerned about whether or not there's Joe or whoever else that's in the seat. The function will remain the same in terms of a staff supporting council decisions.
Thank you. Through the chair, just to add to Ben's comment, the council did accept the minutes that were submitted, and therefore it would have gone to the planning department, Trevor, to work on implementing the suggestions that were made. So we would see it in the next stage of however the zoning draft comes through.
Maybe I didn't read the minutes more thoroughly, but I did not see some of the details that I was concerned about. I just want to know how, I know that when questions come from you to us and then they go back to council, that's addressed. But then there were a lot of other things that were brought up, and I just don't know how those get captured because I don't see them getting captured.
Actually, Karen, I think I might, as a chair, I think it's our responsibility. If we want it to go to council, it's got to be in a motion, and it has to have the support of the majority of the committee. So the comments inform us as a committee, but the motions and the resolutions that are passed are what the council, it's the only thing the council really reads, I'm guessing. Angus?
Yeah, I was just going to say the same thing. I don't have a ton of board experience, but we function in the same similar way, right? And in previous boards that I've been on, motions are recorded in the minutes, not even who votes for or against, just the motion, because if it's passed, then the board or us as a committee is decided that we support this, regardless if half of us or slightly less than half of us are opposed to it. We now as a committee support this motion. And so the only mechanism that we have to make sure that things get presented to council is if we pass a motion.
And if I could use an example, because the minutes that we passed earlier in this meeting, there was a recommendation to council that the home sizes of principal residence sizes on ALR be reduced from 5,000 square feet, which will now be 465 square meters, to 3,500 square feet, which will now be 325 square meters. That was accepted by council. So my understanding now is now that council has accepted it, I'll ask Sanjeev, what happens at that point? We've done our bit, we've discussed it, we've made a recommendation. Council has accepted that recommendation. What happens next?
If I may, Sanjeev, and thanks, Peter, council received those recommendations, and they directed it to staff for consideration and future revisions to the zoning bylaw. So council couldn't possibly, at the time, deliberate and discuss that specific change. So I think that the exact action was, Sanjeev, correct me if I'm wrong, was that council simply received those minutes, and they now that's in the funnel for the planning department to further consider all of those minutes. But if I'm wrong, please correct me.
Thank you. My understanding was the council received it and directed staff to act on it. That was my understanding, but
Well,
I could,
we-
sorry,
well-
we're now going into circles.
Yeah.
Okay, could we get back to that? So I know, I'll look at the agenda, what we have on the 15th of June meeting that might capture what actually took place. So pardon me for the oversight.
And we also now have a seasoned interim director that can definitely review all those minutes and understand what's on his list and what's not on his list, but yeah.
Okay, thanks. I will look forward to that. Greg?
Yeah, so I have to agree with Angus on this, that that's my understanding how boards work, or committees, I'm assuming as well, that the motion has to be made and approved, and then we accept it. And then it goes to council for acceptance, but not necessarily inclusion. That's really staff to go through that with the experience of your director of planning to basically make those kinds of calls. So for us as a committee to see if the motion we put forward was actually makes it into the document, we have to go back and review the document itself to see if that's the case. That's my understanding. So again, I guess we're going to get some clarification on that, but I guess it's important that we come up with very specific motions to go forward if we ever want to see this have the light of day or see it in the revised bylaws.
Yes. Go ahead, Ben.
And if I can add to that, that's exactly correct in my opinion. For instance, the idea of trying to restrict McMansions or whatever, like the massive agricultural house, that's a valid concern. So now that's heard. The director of planning, and again, I'm speaking outside of my lane, but they might undertake that and create some different policy to try and motivate or to try and restrict that in a different way. Just simply restricting might have legal implications. We could be sued by people. There's all these factors, but what we did here and what we did receive is that this committee indicated, is there something we can do to not support these massive overbuilds on agricultural lands that don't support farming? Anyways, again, I'm on my
No,
lane.
thank you, and I think
I'll
that
just
we'll
stop
call
speaking.
to an end there because we know our lane is just to make clear recommendations to council, and that's what we do. But once again, that's why Felice was so great. He would come back and say, you know, there might be kind of conflicting influence here. That may not be able to just the way we want it. It's got to recognize other things. So we're moving forward, making sure that our recommendations to council are as unambiguous as they can be. Yeah.
Sorry, just to be clear on one point, it's still valid to make comments, just realizing that at the end of the day, it probably won't receive the light of day. You don't even know if you make a motion that it will. So, but our concerns as comments, I think it's important, and we can't get them all down into a motion, obviously. We don't have the time or the ability or the legal expertise to do that. So I think it's still important to make comments, but then if you want it to move forward as best we can, it's through a motion.
Okay, great. So at our last meeting, we made several motions that have gone to council. And I think at this meeting, we want to know, are there more? So Berna, I'm going to give the floor to you.
Thank you. You mean to talk a bit about the themes that came out of the notes from the meeting, the farmer meeting?
Yes, I mean that, as Greg says, every conversation has merit, has benefit, but leading to, if you want to lead to something that is going to go to council, take us there.
Okay. Yeah, so I did go through them and I just pulled out some themes that recurred, and a big one was the lack of affordable housing. I'll read some of the quotes from what was written. Lack of options for housing, current bylaws creating estates, housing for family is onerous and expensive, we need affordable farm housing. Those were kind of the general statements that related to affordable housing. So maybe I'll say, for one thing, I noticed in the definition of affordable housing it says, means housing which costs less than 30% of before-tax household income. Whose household income? Like, how is that?
I can speak to that, having worked in the not-for-profit housing sector. That is a standard that is used to define whether somebody's paying too much rent. So that 30% is sort of a number that's out there, and Joe probably knows that as well, how you measure income of your household to determine what's reasonable. And I don't know where that number comes from, but it's embedded in those kinds of definitions.
So then the affordable farm housing of a McMansion is if the person's really wealthy, then that's affordable housing?
Yeah, sorry. Can I speak to the affordability? Yeah.
Response first and then Greg.
Sure, okay. So I think, like when you're looking at the 30% gross household annual income, that is a measure of affordability, okay? So if you're in a situation where you're paying up to 30% of your your annual gross household income, and you're paying no more than 30% of that for your housing is very affordable for you. If you're paying 40% of your annual income, your housing is a little less affordable for you. If you're paying 50% of your gross annual income, you're starting to become, you're having challenges with housing. If you're paying 60% of your annual income for your housing, you're starting to feel some real stress, okay? So that 30% is a measure of affordability. You have to be careful how you apply it, okay? So if you say, well, what farmhouse in North Saanich can anybody afford with 30% of their gross annual income? Well, the answer is hardly any, unless your gross annual income is $400,000 or $500,000 a year, okay? So you have to be really careful how you apply the affordability argument, okay? Now, when we talk about affordable housing in any community, including North Saanich, we're really talking about not-for-profit housing, okay? So when you start doing your planning policies, your zoning policies, your density bonusing schemes, programs, your partnerships with not-for-profit housing providers, that's when that 30% becomes relevant, because I was on the board of directors for Gorge View Housing Society for the last 6 years. We own, operate, and build not-for-profit housing, okay? And in our program, we have rent levels that we charge that are based on 30% of the income of the tenants, okay? So in that case, the 30% measure becomes useful. But be careful when you talk about affordability. It's a really complicated item. Don't get co-opted into this 30% measure, and then all of a sudden you're saying, well, I'm not prepared to approve that housing development, even though it's consistent with the OCP, because it's unaffordable. Well, what does unaffordable mean? So here's something to think about. No house in North Saanich is affordable for everyone, but every house in North Saanich is affordable to someone.
Yes.
Okay? So try and keep that in your mind when you're talking about affordability. Otherwise, this is a quagmire. You're not going to have any fun talking about affordability.
Okay, thanks very much. And just to remind, we're talking agriculture. We're not talking subdivisions.
Okay, but I thought I heard like affordable farm housing?
Yeah, so it was really, and that's partly our recommendation from last time, why we suggested 3,500 square feet, was that we feel that, or I'll say I feel that it needs to be affordable for somebody who is getting an income from the property. And when the houses get too big, then that becomes impossible. And that farm will essentially be removed from food production forever, maybe. So that is what we were talking about with agriculture income, and recognizing too that there are usually two people in the relationship, and one may be working off the property. So I don't know if we need to keep going with the affordable housing part, because it is something that we kind of dealt with at the other meeting, but
Okay, well,
don't want to get mired into it.
Right.
Greg, do you want to finish this up?
Yeah, sorry, to follow up on Berna's comments, I think we do have to get down a little bit in the quagmire here, because the fact that those words are mentioned reflects back onto farmlands. And I think what we're trying to say here is that on a farm, if you're making your living at farming, and Angus will be able to comment on this, and I have farm families as well, that it comes down to, will you be able to have a home that you can live in and afford based on making primarily your income from agriculture, production from your land. And that's what we're trying to get at. So the easiest way, so we didn't get down into the quagmire, was to come up with a number. And we were questioned by that in the last council meeting by councillors. Well, why do they come up with that number? Where did they come up? Because it is a quagmire. So in order to synthesize this into a motion that is straightforward and easy to apply, we can't get into these 30% for who and what and why. We have to stick to what we think is affordable based on what we know of our farming community and what size of house that would mean relative to building costs these days.
Right.
And of course, that's going to have to change, but that's why you have bylaws, so that you can amend them. But we thought as a starting point, 3,500 square feet, or whatever the metrics were, and then a small cottage to provide for succession planning, for farm help. And I know in particular in my own case, to attract a young person to help out on our farm, I had to do exactly that affordability measure. I had to raise the amount of what I paid that person to meet this 30% threshold, so that they weren't being eaten up by rent in some, and it's just about impossible. So anyway, that's a side comment, but I think that's why we came up with the 3,500 square feet. So we didn't get into the quagmire, so we could put it down in paper in one word or one sentence without getting down into this kind of quagmire.
Okay, so if you don't mind, if I can comment on that, I think Councillor Sanjeev tried to address that on April 27th when he was talking about the affordability paradox, okay? And without putting words in your mouth, and I think what you tried to say is that it's more affordable to build a 3,000 square foot home on a farm piece than a 5,000 square foot home, you know? And that was, yeah, so I think he's trying to take your thoughts forward, you know, one way or another, but it is kind of complicated, right? So anyway.
Yeah, and I'm not sure if this conversation is going to result in another motion, or we're just really trying to convey to you our reasoning behind it, if you weren't there. Angus?
Yeah, I'd like to make a motion that we extend our meeting. Mm-hmm. Can we?
Through the chair, under the new terms of reference, we can go up to 2 hours without a motion to extend. Anything beyond 2 hours, though,
pull my motion.
You will. Thank you.
You think we're going to go beyond 12? You could do it, but I think we'll see how we do. Okay, so I just want to get back to this issue. So I think the committee has made it clear the rationale, and you can go back to the last meeting and get even more detail. I don't think it's going to result in a different motion. The motion that we put forward at the last council meeting was accepted, or a majority of council accepted it. And we've got to find out what happens downstream of that, but we will sometime. So are we got more to add?
Sorry, just one more comment. I want to agree with that. And this discussion was just to make it clear to staff that this is why we've come up with this, and it's important that it be considered and be very thoughtful, that because we're trying to avoid the quagmire is what we're trying to do.
Okay, Berna, sorry, continue on.
Sure, yeah. So another big one that came up had to do with drainage and flooding. And people talked about the municipality needs better drainage support, small acreages surrounded by residential, too much water. The number one problem is drainage. Ditch maintenance is lacking back up onto fields. I was on the Peninsula Ag Commission for a number of years as well, and this came up again and again and again, and you see it in the papers. It just seems that often farmland is at the bottom of hills, and the work is not done properly when there is development uphill from farmland. It happened with me on an individual property basis. It happens from large developments, and I didn't see much in this that talked about who is responsible for making sure that drainage, or that properties do not drain onto neighboring properties or flood farmlands. And so I think that's something that we need to,
Okay.
needs
So I
to be
think, Mr.
addressed.
Chairman, like your objective today is to inform me what you talked about last month, not for me to comment on every item, right?
Yes, what we're doing is, yeah, please don't expect that you're on the hot seat here. That's not what we're doing. Yeah. Okay. But I think we have a choice here. I think we can, if we're going to make a tangible step forward, it's got to come in a motion.
Yes.
And I think we can ask Ben, who's got a lot to do with this, why it is the way it is and what options we have and what wording, or, can you respond to what Berna is saying?
Thanks, Peter. And sure, I can add a few comments. Great comment. There are measures to protect the drainage system and consequently other properties. And there's language like post-development flows have to match pre-development flows. So if you have an undeveloped piece of property, it has a natural flow off it. It's not concentrated, just the surface area. So anything that you do to adjust that or develop that property, you can't exceed those pre-development flows. So that's something that could be referred to in the zoning bylaw, but there's also other bylaws where that can be captured. We currently do that practice in subdivision. However, for some new homes with our current bylaw regime, we don't request that, but excellent question. And then further to the drainage, we recognize that asset and the need to pay attention to that asset. So we did our first ever drainage master plan. And then we also did an integrated stormwater management plan in the Sycamore watershed, which is particularly affected by drainage. So we do have those planning documents that speak to quality and quantity, policy, and whatnot. So that's a great comment, really relevant.
I did have one comment about the wording in the zoning bylaw when it refers to neighboring lots, and it's defined as, you share a lot line. But I think when it's drainage, we're often talking about watersheds. You mentioned the word watershed. And I'm not sure if the responsibility that farmers are feeling, it's not necessarily their next door neighbor. It could be somewhere upstream in the watershed. So is it implied? Well, it isn't implied. It's defined that a neighbor is sharing a lot line. And I think that when it comes to some of these drainage issues, it's a watershed issue more so. And I'm not sure how that's captured in the responsibility or the zoning responsibility.
Thanks, Peter. I'll try to stop talking about infrastructure and I'll leave it over to Joe. But that great comment, and I agree. However, the details of that are probably best covered in a drainage bylaw. The drainage bylaw will set performance criteria for each property. The zone, that term neighborhood is probably quite relevant for the zoning bylaw. So yeah, it would probably be in our drainage bylaw, which is bylaw number 41, which is next on my list to revise.
Okay. So there's a coordination between the bylaws. So we shouldn't look at the zoning bylaw in isolation. The drainage bylaw is going to hopefully. So we have another chance of emphasizing our concerns. Good, Greg.
Just further to Berna's comment, so it's not only drainage, but it's also the buffer between farmlands and urban development or even residential development again, putting your house right up against farmland, you get all kinds of runoff. So if you're an organic farmer and all of a sudden somebody decides to put up a huge apartment complex or even greenhouses for that matter, the drainage coming off of that, particularly when you're downhill, and I can speak to that specifically because our farm property is downhill from everybody, we get whatever comes off of there without any thought about the quality of what comes through. So I would suggest that we consider a buffer on those properties that are being developed, grasslands and forest lands that are maintained and properly planted with native species that are irrigated at the point so that they can establish themselves, not, oh yeah, we tried, we put in a couple fir trees and it didn't work. No, that's not good enough.
Yes, please, go ahead, Sanjeev.
Just on that point, if that's a comment that you would like to make, I would suggest that you do it as a motion. Thank you.
Yeah, I think that this is, we've agreed, this has to lead to a motion if you want it to go further. Comments are great, but a motion is better.
Yeah, I guess so. Those are my comments. I can put it into a motion if you'd like, or do we want to discuss it? Does anyone have any other comments so I can make sure that I make the motion broad enough to consider every comment on this? Or just
I suggest you make the motion as you see it now.
Okay.
We'll discuss it and amend it if we want to.
Okay. So I'd like to make a motion that within either the bylaw 41 or within the bylaws 1604, 1606, that areas be considered between farmlands and urban developments to provide an offset of grasslands and forest lands that are to be maintained through irrigation planted with native species. Something like that.
Do we have a seconder? Darlene? And I'll open it up for comments. Terry?
This topic has come up before, and I understand there is already in the bylaws an offset requirement between urban and agricultural lands. Is that true? And what is it set at right now? I think Felice mentioned it a few meetings ago.
Hi, Terry. I don't have the zoning and bylaw in front of you, and I don't think Joe has it either, but definitely we can just determine what is in there now.
I don't know what it is now, but it's been there for quite a while, and I guess the question is it sufficient as it is, or do we need bigger buffers, you know? Yeah, and I can't answer that question now. So.
No, I think you've nailed it. Buffers have been spoken about with every zoning bylaw, with every OCP. The effectiveness of what's in there now is coming under question, and perhaps why Greg is proposing something different.
Again, I probably don't have the wording right. That's why we'll have to rely on staff to come up with something that considers that, but you have to have some agricultural experience, some farmer experience to be able to say how large that buffer needs to be, what types of species, what are the best for taking out that particulate matter that is a pollutant on farmlands, and that we don't end up filling our fields with plastics and forever chemicals and whatever else is draining off urban development. And we also have to be careful about the definition of urban development. Does that mean high rises and pavement, or does it mean somebody next to you who's deciding to build a 10,000 square foot house and a swimming pool and concrete and all that sort of stuff? Is that going to affect the lands as well? So again.
Okay, thanks. I'm just looking at the time, so quick comments, because then we'll have the motion read back to us. Understanding now that the process is we put something at the council discuss it, then it goes to staff. So it doesn't have to be perfect, okay? But it does have to convey the point you want. So Darlene, then Bernard.
Thank you, Chair. Just quick add to it. Maybe we could put something in about not removing existing buffer areas, because that's a favorite of a lot of developments, is to just clear cut everything and, that should go and everything's gone. Maybe there's buffers that exist that shouldn't be removed and could be added to, but just something add.
I see the point. Rather than taking it down and building another one,
Yeah, if we can amend my motion to include the buffer, maintain existing buffers and increase them to ensure that there is not drainage onto farmlands that would be pollutant.
Thanks, folks. Great discussion, super relevant. Just for everyone's benefit, municipalities also, and we have as well, stormwater source control bylaw. So we couldn't possibly create a big enough buffer for every scenario, when really what we want is we want a certain quality of stormwater. And it could be anything, right? Any criteria. So we do have that stormwater source control bylaw here. We have Sydney, Central Saanich, North Saanich, because we couldn't do it ourselves. The CRD does it for us. I can make a call and have a CRD person come out and take a sample. If there's a farmer loading animal waste too close to a ditch and it's leaching into there, our staff don't have the means to go and test. They will do that. If there's a business doing with some runoff that's inappropriate and any resident has a complaint, we can get a test. And there's requirements for any owner, whether it's agricultural, residential business, they have a performance obligation to only provide good quality stormwater. They can't add contaminants. So there's lots of factors where we try and hit that. The buffer is very important, and I think it's super relevant. Just wanted to let everyone know that there are other means that municipalities use.
I think what we're doing here is we're trying to make all our bylaws self-supporting. So if it's in the zoning bylaw, it's reinforced in the drainage bylaw. It's reinforced in the OCP. So nobody can say, oh, but it doesn't say it anything in this one bylaw. And that's why, you know, it may be very relevant in the drainage bylaw, but it's also, in our opinion, worthwhile considering when it comes to zoning and it's in the OCP. So could I ask, what do we have on the floor right now as a motion?
Through the chair, I'm actually going to request if Greg could repeat the original motion that he made, please.
I make a motion that with respect to farmlands, that appropriate buffers be maintained or further developed to provide grasslands or forested areas using native species to protect farmlands from stormwater or pollutants running off of properties, urban developments next door to farm properties, and that those buffers be properly irrigated to establish those trees till they're full grown.
Thanks. I was going to say keep it to one sentence, but I think you did. It's just a long one. So my sense is that you want to, the motion should be along the lines we want to maintain existing buffers on agricultural land, the maintenance and enhancement of buffers. I don't know. I think that the staff will have to get into all the grassland and the trees and the, you know, and the native stuff.
And it shouldn't have to be a development happening. It could just be adjacent lands.
Or lands affecting agriculture?
Or lands affecting agriculture.
Okay, so let's start with a very short sentence. It's maintain or enhance buffers. Okay. And we'll go down this way. Angus, you start.
Well, my comment was that Karen is trying to get your attention.
Okay, Karen?
So there was an entire document developed by the Ministry of Agriculture called Edge Planning. And at one point, we did have that. I think I brought it forward to Mary Ann Felice. And I believe perhaps some of this information worked its way into the OCP. I'm not sure about the zoning bylaw, but that document that was developed by the ministry took about 10 years to do, which I know because I personally worked on it. And there's a lot of good information there, and I think we need to be referring to it. So that's my one comment. Comment two, with regard to what we've been talking about, what Greg's proposed, is I think we need to be clear about where we're maintaining buffers, and I don't think the onus should totally fall on the farmer to maintain a buffer. It should be coming, if there's any development on the urban side, it should be coming from the urban side. And if the buffer isn't there already, it should be put into place. And there's even specific examples. I happen to just fall into the deep dark hole of the website and found this application. I don't know if it's still on your books, with a 38-lot subdivision coming off East Saanich Road from Cresswell, and it bangs right up against the ALR. This would be a prime example of where you would want to be establishing a significant buffer there. Okay, that's it.
Okay, thank you. That raises some good points, good discussion points. Terry?
Having worked with buffers and stuff in the past in land management, it's a really complicated question. As Karen's brought up, you guys spent 10 years working on it, right? And I've worked on it in the field, and it's not just how wide it is, right? It's the material, the soils, and it's not just development. It could be activities on adjacent lands. So a property could be just nice, nothing's happening on it. All of a sudden they start doing some, I don't know, moving some soil around or something, then you get activity which is causing disturbance, and then you start changing what's in the water, the drainage water, right? So it's super complicated. I'm just wondering if we know that there is something in the bylaw already for buffers. So are we saying that we're not satisfied with what's in the current bylaw? It sounds like it to me.
I think that's a good point, and I'm just going to let Angus speak first, because we're going to have to move on.
Yeah, I just wanted to make an amendment to Greg's motion to say that I think it should be phrased a little more succinctly, with all due respect, because I would have a hard time voting in favor of that, because it's like the world's worst run-on sentence. So purely based on syntax, I have issues with it. I would like to move that we request council consider improving the existing requirements for buffers to bring them in line with the BC Ag edge planning document.
Okay, so I think that is getting us further along. The other option is we do our homework. If there's something in the bylaw that you want changed, the motion has to be, this is what we want changed. And this is what we did this is what we did last time. I find this is just, it's just discussing things. I'm not sure if it's going to get that much traction. So why don't we put a pin in it, come back at our next meeting with something specific. And I think, Angus, you were getting towards it, but I would like to see a reference to the draft bylaw and say, this is what we want changed in the draft bylaw. And I think that'll make it easier for council to deal with it, and it'll also give us a chance to say, you know, it just becomes more specific than, you know, general. Angus?
Yeah, the only thing I would add to what you said, Peter, is that I think it's important that we remember that we're not engineers, we're not agronomists, we're, you know, like, I don't think that any motion that we put forward should be trying to get into any level of detail other than to perhaps source something credible and relevant. Because I think if we are getting into that kind of detail, it's everything in this, and I don't mean just drainage, everything in the zoning bylaw is far too complex for us to try to solve down to the letter of the law, that I think we need to remember that our role is to advocate for food security and agriculture.
Okay, so where we're going to stand right now is we've got 10 minutes left.
Sorry, Peter, there is a motion on the floor.
Yeah, and it's Greg's motion.
I'm going to remove my motion and suggest that we go with Angus's motion, irrespective of the fact that it may not line up. I think we need something in front of council. And I think the reference to what Karen had said, with 10 years of study gone into it, I mean, that doesn't get any better than that, I don't think so.
Okay.
I don't think you need to remove your motion, because I made an amendment to it. So if we have a vote, then it would be on my amendment, I think.
Excellent.
Actually, I think it would be cleaner to remove yours, because we're not quite sure what it was, and have a 10-word motion. You work on the 10-word motion. Greg, are you okay with withdrawing your motion? Yeah, I have. Seconder? Who seconded it? Darlene, are you okay with being removed? Okay, so there is no motion on the floor right now. Does that, you got that, Megan? Okay. So Angus, if you can recall what you said, you make a motion
Just
to the effect that.
Just before Angus does that, I just wanted to ask, I'm pretty sure that the ALC has rules around buffers. Would that be in addition to the Ministry of Ag work, or they would be within that? Okay.
Actually, Joe?
I wonder if I can offer a suggestion to Angus with respect to the motion that council consider buffers that reflect best practice in British Columbia. Something like that. And then you don't have to specifically reference your document or whatever.
Well, so, actually what I was going to say was, to my previous comment, I don't know what the current buffer bylaw is in North Saanich, so I'm not putting a motion forward because I don't know what it is. I can't put my name behind something that I don't really understand.
Okay, that makes sense. And I think that once again reflects, we were discussing something, not really the bylaw, what's in the bylaw right now. We're just discussing the concept of buffers. And that's not what the conversation was meant to be about. So I'm going to suggest that we leave this as unfinished business. Karen, if you want to come to the next meeting relating to this bylaw, what you want to see changed, then that's what we'll send to council. Because as Angus says, you may look at it with more attention and find out that it actually is pretty good. And we don't want to kind of kick up dust when it's not necessary. Are we okay with that? So I think what we're going to do is we're going to halt this conversation about the zoning bylaw update. Thank you very much, Joseph. But we're going to leave it as unfinished business and bring it up at our next meeting. Any comments? Okay, so we're going to move on to Darlene. Oh, Darlene, yeah.
Could I just make one kind of general overarching comment to Mr. Kalenda? Thank you for joining us today. Couple of things. I always get nervous when someone new to a position kind of says, don't worry, be happy, I got this. The characterization of North Saanich that we've embraced here is we are a rural agricultural community, not rural urban. Urban containment boundary is south of us. Yeah. And that's important. The other thing that we would probably be happy with would be agricultural bonusing versus density bonusing. So just another thought from a agricultural standpoint that that's also something that we're all concerned about.
Thank you, Darlene. I appreciate those comments. Okay. Yep.
Yeah, and thank you. I think that one of the things that Terry brought up last was the BC government's rural initiative, and I'm not quite sure how that is proceeding through the BC government, but I think that was something that was supportive of the agricultural, or basically our rural community, as opposed to the Urban Development Institute, which I think is probably not aligned with the agricultural kind of future. Any further comments? Okay, now we have 5 minutes left and we have several agenda items. Yep.
Sorry, Chair, is there a motion that you would want the zoning to be again on the next committee meeting?
Yes, we'll continue.
Okay,
it. So we'll make I'll make a motion that our discussion of the zoning bylaw update be included under unfinished business at our next committee meeting. Second comment. All comments? All those in favor? Passed. Thank you. Thank you. Okay, our next unfinished business was the establishment of quality of life and age-friendly community working group discussion. Now, before I make a motion to extend the meeting, we have, if you look at your agenda, we have the age-friendly community working group, the temporary use permit, Sandown Land Walking Group, the PRC in Central Saanich, and the new terms of reference. Is there anything that, I mean, do we have the option to just drop stuff if we can't get to it? Do we want to start making a decision, or do we want to try and get it all in?
I spoke to the Sandown Walking Group at the last meeting, so I don't know that we need to deal with that unless I need to move acceptance of this report.
Okay, well, so we'll include it. I hearing no responses. I think I'm going to make a motion that we extend the meeting by 20 minutes. Seconder? Comment? In favor? In favor? Okay, opposed? It passes. 5-2. So we'll continue on for another 20 minutes. Yeah.
Thank you. For the record, can we confirm who the seconder was?
Yes, the seconder was Karen.
Perfect. Thank you. Multiple hands went up. Everybody was eager. Thank you.
So I'm going to go through the agenda as in the order that it's on our agenda sheet. The establishment of an equality and of life and age-friendly community working group discussion. Can anybody speak to that? Darlene, Darlene, do you want to do your gizmo? Your microphone.
Sorry, I'll jump in. Bernadette was the chair, so she could comment on that. I think you got nominated to be on that committee, so thank you.
Okay, that's it. Okay, I accept the nomination. Thank you very much. Next, that doesn't require a motion. I don't think. Just for the record, I have put my name forward and look forward to being contacted. Temporary use permit, verbal update from the senior planner. Who can staff speak to that?
Yeah, I'm not sure how that quite got on the agenda. Nonetheless, I have checked in with Trevor, and it's on his work plan, and his hope is to bring it to council. I think he said by the end of June, but I'm not sure. They've got a lot on their plate. Maybe Councillor Sanjeev can speak to that.
Thank you, Chair. That's correct. I think it's still on the work plan for Trevor to bring it back to the committee.
Okay, that's great. I think that when we talk about bringing, is Trevor here right now? We were just about to close this conversation, but welcome, Trevor, and let us know.
Specifically, what item are we on right now on the agenda?
We're on the temporary use permit for 10555 West Saanich.
Thank you.
And the question for you is that the last time this came forward, it went so quickly that the advisory committee had no opportunity to review the property or review the permit.
Understood.
And so we asked that next time it happens, which it did reoccur, that we be included in the loop.
Right. So based on some timeliness issues and staff resources, Council, when this application for temporary use permit was received back in January for essentially the next round of use on the property, staff were not in a position to be able to process the application given resources available and to deal with the zoning bylaw. So the decision was made that the zoning bylaw would take priority, and we solicited council for a motion to allow essentially a suspension of the permitted uses on the property to give grace, if you will, to the use on the property, use of the property as a film studio in the interim until such time as council could consider the application in a fulsome way. part of that fulsome consideration will be staff bringing the application before the Ag Committee for a recommendation prior to going to council. So I have not done that yet. I was redirected onto applications, and we're juggling priorities at this point in time. When the application comes forward, it will be brought to the Ag Committee for recommendation prior to going to council for consideration. So that is the intended process associated with that application.
Thank you very much.
Any questions
Any questions from the committee? Karen?
Hi, Trevor. Thanks. So how long can it take between, well, this was January 26th, I think, when their permit ran out, if I'm correct?
Sounds about right.
Something like that.
January 30th, I think it was, but yes.
And they still have not, is that what you're saying? They haven't put in another application?
No, they have put in an application.
Oh.
This is a staff issue, and as such, staff approached council, and council gave leave for them to continue the use until such time as the submitted application could be processed by staff and considered by the Ag Committee and subsequently be considered by council. The applicant submitted a new application in a timely manner, and they have done everything appropriate. The processing time delay is associated with staff resources.
Okay, and sorry, and your time estimate is?
Some time ago, the time estimate was to bring it forward in the summertime of this year. So my hope is to be able to pivot, but the zoning bylaw has been delayed by about a month with some uncertainty. So we're looking at which priority are we going to work towards. And we'll have to get some direction from council on that potentially.
Okay, thanks.
Okay, thank you. Any other comment? Terry?
Hi, Trevor.
Hi.
So are they operating on a use permit right now?
They're operating under the premise of the previous temporary use permit and following that as the directive for how they're operating on the site.
So they're operating on a temporary use permit right now?
No, they're operating under the relief from council because their temporary use permit expired. However, they're functionally operating in a manner consistent with their previously issued temporary use permit.
Yeah, that's what I mean, their
Yes.
previous.
So they don't have a temporary use permit, but they have an application in for a new one.
Okay.
But they're operating under the approval that was given previously. And under the understanding that they're doing so under their best practices. And we're not receiving any complaints. The site is being managed to the best of our understanding. There's been no change and no negative impact to agriculture on the property. I've had conversations with the vineyard operator, and he's indicated that he's continuing operations at this point in time with no impediment. So, like I said, we're trying to manage the situation from a staff resourcing standpoint, but they are following their best practices consistent with the previous temporary use permit.
Okay, thanks.
Okay, seeing no more questions, thank you very much. That
answers it?
It answers the question. That's great.
Thank you very much. Appreciate it.
Thank you. See you next time. Okay, we'll move on to the next agenda item, which is the Sandown Land Walking Group. Berna, anything to add?
Nothing to add.
So thank you. I think we're just accepting the walkout notes. Any comments or questions on the walkout notes? Seeing none. We'll move on to motions and new business. Agenda item 8A, proposed recreation facility in Central Saanich. I will ask for any comment by staff or council liaison on this item.
Okay. Thank you, Chair. I'll just give some comment. This is about an alternate funding mechanism that the Rec Commission is seeking in terms of asking for $14 million towards building a recreational facility in Central Saanich, with the argument being, or the justification being, that current rec center panorama is over capacity. Those were the suggestions the rationale behind it, and to so-called decrease footprint and traffic at the rec center. At the same time, the commentary was that there have been, whenever there are courses offered or events offered, they get filled up, classes are filled up very quickly. So apparently there is a need for an extra facility. The loan authorization only becomes effective if all the three municipalities, Central Saanich, Town of Sydney, and North Saanich approves it. Central Saanich has, of course, approved it. Town of Sydney and the council meeting has rejected the loan authorization, but the District of North Saanich has moved this to go to all the advisory committee for their comments and feedback before the council makes a decision on whether they approve or not this loan authorization. It does impact the district in terms of the taxes, which go up by, I think, $47 per person per household, per household at this point in time. So, thank you.
Okay, thank you. Is there a staff report on this?
No, at the meeting where this was brought forward, the CRD prepared a presentation for council to receive or to hear the rationale behind it, as Councillor Sanjeev laid out, and the financing of it required approval of the three local governments, and I think council's decision to move it forward and still continue to gather information comes from a place of the CRD now needs to go back to figure out refinancing as the Central Saanich, and so they may come back with another proposal, and so council will then be prepared to, once they've got feedback from the committees and there's more work to the community as I understand it, they'll have more information to be able to make a more informed decision at that time. So that's how it landed here.
Okay, so as it stands right now, Sydney has rejected it. So
that's correct.
Why are I don't quite understand what would be the mechanism for Sydney to reverse their decision and then North Saanich have to kind of weigh in on this. If they decided against it, then why are we discussing it?
So I think we don't know what we don't know if it's going to come back. We don't know, and if it does come back, what form it will take. But we started this path already before we knew that the town of Sydney had voted against that resolution. So this is just providing information. Should it come back, council is in a better place to provide their response more quickly.
It just seems, to me, if Sydney does change their mind, it would be based on information that would be very relevant to our decision. So I'm somewhat hesitant to embark in a conversation which I know the only reason it'll become relevant is it's something we did not consider. But I'll leave it open to the committee to, I mean, I think we could just, yeah.
Sorry, I'll just make a comment. I think we have to make our decision independent of Sydney's choice. And then when it goes to the CRD for a decision making where the three municipalities, whether it has to be unanimous, but we have to make a decision regardless of which way Sydney is going to go.
Okay, and I think we can make a recommendation based on that. But from my understanding of what I've read in the newspaper, because there's no reports, is that Sydney's justification kind of aligns with my thinking, and that's the only information I have. If they have something new that might reconsider, it would be relevant to my decision, but we won't get a chance to reconsider. Oh, we may get a chance to reconsider. Okay. Angus?
Yeah, short of there being some sort of recommendation to put a 4-H barn in a new facility, I don't really understand why we're commenting on this.
Well, it was council direction, and we serve at council's pleasure, and they asked us for an opinion, and so we will give our recommendation to the best of our ability, given the information we have. And the information we have is, I think there's letters to council that, I don't know if everybody's seen, it's 4-1 not in favor. Sydney, not in favor. But I don't know if there was anything on the mock pack from the farmers that were asking for a rec center. Nothing? Okay. But I'll leave it open. Any comments?
Thanks, Chair. I guess my feeling is that's a lot of money to be spending in Central Saanich when we have a rec center that's badly in need of upgrading. And I know the comment had been made that we can't go to a second level, but we have excavators. We can go down and put the parking lot underground and still maintain the same level and probably double the space for exercise rooms and whatever. A little creativity would go a long way, and I'd like to properly upgrade the facility we already have. Thanks.
Any other comments before I look for a motion? Yeah.
Just a question is, where would the location of this proposed new building be? Is it affecting agriculture at all?
It would be located in Central Saanich. Has got a new proposal for their municipal hall, and they're incorporating a bunch of different things into it. It would be part of that structure in Central Saanich.
Okay, I'm looking for a motion. I think the agenda item is the proposed recreational facility in Central Saanich. I'm going to make the motion that the Ag Advisory Committee does not support the proposed recreational facility in Central Saanich. Is that clear enough? Is there a seconder? Are there any further comments? All those in favor? So it's carried. Pardon? Was there opposed?
I mean, I think effectively I opposed because I abstained. I think against you.
You cannot abstain. You have to get off the fence there, Angus. It's going to be hurting if you don't get off the fence.
No, I just think, I don't think it's appropriate for me to make a comment on this. You know, like, again, and we talked about this when we talked about our terms of reference, but I think that, you know, if we begin to give feedback all the time about everything, we become just like this noise in the background. And I think Darlene and Karen asked good questions in regards to, like, okay, does this impact farmland? And, you know, how can we improve existing to be a bit more effective with our dollars? But, you know, I don't want to use my position in this committee to become like a special resident who gets a little bit better access to council than everybody else. I want to make sure that I'm advocating on behalf of food security and agriculture, which is why I would like to abstain. If I think the terms of reference say that I can't, so I'll vote in favor, I suppose. But
oh, no, I understand your position really well. There's two points in this particular issue. One is it was a direct request from council, so we can either ignore council or, and I think you're making your point to Sanjeev, is that we're only looking at this through the lens of agriculture. That's all we can do. We don't have a special position. We are private residents, and if we had a different position, we could come to council and make that point. But on this committee, we're only speaking through the lens of agriculture. Okay?
Might I recommend then in your motion, put that language into it so that council understands from this committee, from the point of agriculture as it relates to North Saanich, something like that, and then that maybe addresses something for Angus.
Okay.
because I also feel like, you know, that presentation that we just had from Trevor, it should, I think, be underlining for us the fact that staff is not sitting there going, gee, I sure hope we could, you know, rework some motions and make another report for council. And so, like, the less work that we can give staff, the more they can put their time towards things that really matter quite a bit. So yeah, that's a great suggestion, Barb.
So I think that the core of the motion stays the same. The preface is, make sure it comes from the Agriculture and Food Security Advisory Committee. Through our lens of agriculture, we do not support the proposed recreation facility in Central Saanich.
We already voted on it. Can we retroactively change the wording?
Asking me if I abstained or if I was negative or affirmative. I frankly don't think it matters because if I vote against it, it still passes.
Oh, no, right. But if we want to do it properly, we can pull it back, and I'll put that new motion on the floor.
I don't know that that's allowed.
Yeah. Or can you just put it in?
I think it's good.
Or maybe Sanjeev, actually, leave the motion as it stands so that we don't get into a procedural mess and going recovering from stuff.
I think Lindsay has got something to say.
Yeah. Lindsay?
Thank you, through the chair. So procedurally, if you don't put up your hand, that counts in the affirmative. So we can either... Okay, and as for the wording, staff has captured the intent and we can do some wordsmithing, and we are happy to send the motion to the chairs and liaisons just to make sure that we have captured it correctly.
Okay. Thank you. Lindsay, everybody satisfied? Good. We've got a couple of minutes. We're going on to the last agenda item, which is the new terms of reference as outlined in the COU 149. So I'm focusing really on the agriculture terms of reference. Are there any comments from staff? Anything to add from staff?
Nothing to add. This is just simply for everybody's information and for those who may not have been able to tune in to the May 25th meeting. We just wanted to add all 3 terms of reference to the agendas so people had them for their reference.
Okay. I was at that meeting, as was Berna, guys from, okay. I've got some amendments to make, to suggest. Section 21, reporting to council.
Through the chair, I think that's too late because it has been accepted by the
All right.
council.
I'd like to point out an error in it then.
Thank you.
I'll point out the error in section 21, or no, not the error, the confusion. It says the committee will report to council twice per year, midway through the year and annually. Okay? If they're presenting midway through the year, they're doing it annually. So I don't understand why it doesn't make sense. If it's twice per year and it's going to be annually, that's biannually. And if it's midway through the year, that's the annual presentation. And what the committee was actually asking for was clarification of what council wanted, which is in here. And then something else got added in. You know, it's got to be reported over the course of 2 meetings prior to the submission to council. I don't know where that came from. That did not come from the committee. And even so, we don't have 2 committee meetings before the 17th. So it just seems like procedurally what we've got now is open to change whenever the opportunity arises. I would suggest that it be reconsidered. So if this is just for information, then we'll accept it just for information, recognizing that we're already unable to meet its conditions.
Thank you for the comments and feedback. I appreciate it. So staff drafted these terms of reference based on committee feedback and council direction. You don't have to simply receive at this point. If you want to make any recommendations to council, you're certainly able to do so at this time. And whether or not council takes that into consideration at a meeting, they will direct staff accordingly.
Well, perhaps I could just get clarification, because I don't understand. I want to make sure that we fulfill our obligations as council sees them. So there will be a report midway through the year on August 17th. What's our next commitment to report? Is it August 2027, or is it some other time in the year between that? If you could just clarify what our responsibilities are as a committee, especially as a committee chair.
Yes, thank you. So if there is clarification required regarding the language, I am happy to check in with council on that. Staff did as directed. I just wanted to bring attention to the next item on the agenda, which is the mid-year check-in. So the mid-year would just be halfway through the year. We've got August 17th coming up. This will give the committee the opportunity to think about the check-in now, what you would like to report. Perhaps some members would like to take responsibility for getting that report started, and then the draft report can be discussed at the meeting in July, and then come forward to council at the August meeting.
And so where did that be discussed 2 meetings prior to reporting to council? Where did that come from?
Sorry, while I look this up, we've actually gone over the 20-minute extension, so we will need to make another motion to extend.
Well, it's not going to be me, I didn't vote for the first one. If nobody wants to vote, we'll close the meeting. Motion to adjourn? Or motion to extend? Motion to extend or motion to adjourn?